This is chapter 17. We're just about to kick off the data modeling examples, which is a lot of fun. You really get to see how this stuff works and comes together with very complex operations. I did want to include a few notes on how these examples are set up and how you can get the most out of them. So first thing I want to talk about is how we should walk through the problems and what you should be doing as you're going through these. And then second, I want to include a few notes on how the problems are set up. So let's get started with how you should walk through the problems, how I'm going to try and guide you, but really if you want to get the most out of it, what you should be doing. So first of all, make sure you understand the goal. Really get into the mind as if you were an application developer, understand your customer needs, what you're trying to build here, as that's going to really help you out. The second step here is to actually go out and build that ERD. So pretend like you're building that data model and think about the different objects and how they relate to each other. This is a great way to get some practice if you're actually going to be doing this when you're modeling some tables, as you'll get some feedback on how at least I designed the ERD, and you can compare what you're missing or things like that. Third, think about and really list out the access patterns. And again, just like you're getting into the mindset of how this is going to work. So make sure you write those access patterns down and then go through the steps. And as we're designing that table, think about how you would design the primary key, how you would design the secondary index to handle these different access patterns that you have. Now, just a few notes on how I've set up the problem, some things I've left out or what I choose to focus on. Number one, sometimes I don't include very basic access patterns or describe them if it's kind of obvious or self-evident. So things like creating an individual item, fetching an individual item, updating an individual item. I won't talk about those too much if we've designed the primary key for that item, and you should be able to figure that out yourself. Second, let's talk a little bit about how I design ERDs and especially around attributes. So I did show an ERD earlier that looks like this. There's a note-taking application where a user has multiple notes. You can see on there I've included all these different attributes, including the username, email address, the title created out for the notes. Now, most of my ERDs, I won't include these because they're really not relevant to that data model, and I think it really just kind of clutters up the data model. So my ERDs usually look more like this. It just has the entities and their relationships, and the entities are shown as boxes. So you can see here, if you look on the left, we have users, payment plans, organizations. Those are all different boxes. And then those diamonds, those represent the relationship. So a user has a payment plan, organization has a payment plan, users belong to an organization, things like that. So that's what I'm mapping out there. I'm not so focused on the attributes. Now, while we're on the topic of attributes, let's talk about data models and attributes as well. So as we're working through these different problems, I'm often going to show little chunks of our data model here just to get a sense of how these different items relate to each other and how we're going to handle those access patterns. And I'm always going to include these indexing items because those are the important ones, right? The primary key, very important to have that PK and SK in there. Likewise, I'll have those GSI values in there, PK, all that stuff. The other attributes, the more application-centric attributes, I'm not going to have everything in there because I think it's just not relevant to that data model. So I'll have a few items in here like the org name, subscription level, username, role, things like that, just for you to get a sense of what this item is, but I'm not going to have it as fully fleshed out as you would in your application. And I sort of recommend the same as you're modeling it, where if it's not relevant to the data model, you don't really need to include it in your data modeling examples there. So just to conclude, we're going to start some examples. I just want to level set on how you can get the most out of these examples. And number one, as you're walking through these problems, put yourself in the shoes and go through it. So understand that application, build that ERD, understand those access patterns, and actually try and design that table. And then we just talked about a few notes on how those problems are set up. So with that boilerplate out of the way, let's get into our actual data modeling examples, which is the fun part of this whole book. The first one's going to be pretty simple and straightforward. We're going to be building a session store, but let's go check that one out.